So I've been getting loads of questions about my birth journey with Archer and how that all went. And I thought that I would, since it's about my fifth time attempting to film this, I would just sit down and do it all in one go and share the entire story with you. If you haven't already followed me over here on YouTube or on Instagram, make sure and go and check me out over there and hit that little subscribe button down below if you don't want to miss any more of my future videos. I also shared quite a bit about sort of my birth prep before, so make sure and check out some of the videos that I will have linked in the description box down below. I would say that I actually did more preparation for this birth than I did for my last birth. So I've got all my sort of tips and tricks in those videos and in the highlights section of my Instagram. Last birth, I had planned a home birth with Atticus, who is now 2.5. But I ended up being transferred into hospital because things just went on for so long, and he was very much in an OP position, which meant he was back to back, which meant not only was it a longer labour, I was in labour for 3 days, but it was also much more uncomfortable. So by the end of it, not only was I very, very tired, but I was just ready to have a baby. So I ended up being transferred into hospital and going on to have a very positive birth experience, but I was still so eager for my home birth. So this pregnancy then came about. I have had a really wonderful pregnancy experience, feeling really good. I kept moving loads. I was doing all of the things to try and sort of optimize my wellness and my health going into this birth. Birth is very much a marathon and not a sprint, so I did everything that you could possibly do to maintain my fitness and my stamina and make sure that I was really as ready as could be for this birth. So well, Atticus was born at 42 weeks. When I reached 38 weeks of pregnancy with Archer, I started to feel those little surges, sort of little Braxton Hicks that were kind of coming in a little bit more regularity than I would have liked. So on this particular morning, on the 1st of July 2021, I sent my husband off to work with the same instructions that I had for the rest of the week prior, just saying keep your phone on loud, and that if you need to come back, please do come back pronto with no stops. And he headed off, and I kind of tootled about my day, and it got to lunchtime, and I sort of thought, oh gosh, maybe I should start noting the regularity of these surges, since they were starting to build a little bit more in intensity. They were still very much non-painful. I could just chat away through them. Atticus and I had a lovely morning together. We had a nice little light lunch. I remember we had new potatoes, boiled eggs, and then just like some crunchy veggies along the side. I wasn't in the mood for anything kind of heavy at that point, but at that point I noticed, just as we were heading up to nap time, I was like, okay, there's something going on here. For me, it was really important for me to kind of stay in that left side of my brain, very much my sort of primal instinctual side of my brain, and not get too critical about what was going on with my body at that time, to very much have a relaxed approach to labour, because for me, I have a huge tendency to sort of get stressed about things. So for me, I have to avoid that and keep in the flow of that lovely cocktail of hormones that happens during birth to keep things nice and comfortable for me. The goal was to have very much a positive, gentle birthing experience, which I ended up having. So that worked really well in my favour. But I chose to actually not time them. But I did as I was bringing Atticus up towards his nap. So I remember taking a picture of the clock at 12 o'clock. Taking a picture of the clock, mooching upstairs with him, and texting my husband to say, can you get home? I think things are kind of picking up. So he, of course, headed straight home. I tried my best to rest and sleep with while Atticus was having his nap, and so I just sort of snuggled up to him skin to skin, soaking him in as much as I could before I became mum to another little human. And we had a really lovely emotional few minutes together. I could not sleep through my surges at that point. They were coming, I would say, every sort of 15 or 20 minutes or so. So they were still manageable, but I was much too excited to sleep, as well as the fact that they would wake me when they did come. So we rested together, rested my body. I very much lay in a kind of exaggerated left lateral position, similar to something you would see out of the Miles circuit, which I will try and link down below if I can, because I was still very much convinced this baby was malpositioned despite all of the work that I had done. So I lay in that position with Atticus and just kind of snuggled into him. And when he eventually woke from his nap, Daddy had arrived home, which I didn't realise at the time, but I was very, very relieved. And I feel like things definitely started to kind of get moving once I knew that, okay, I can have a baby soon, you know, it's fine. And I think my body was very sort of tuned into that. So Pete got home, we had a little bite to eat. I wasn't really in the mood for anything heavy at that point. And then we said, okay, you know what, we'll just go out for a little bit of a wander. We'll go for a walk and see whether we can kind of get things moving. So I remember bumping into the neighbours. We did this lovely loop that we have up behind our house with the sort of wild strawberries and loads of lovely foxgloves at the moment. It's really beautiful. And I just remember like everything being so sort of effervescent and vibrant and just being like this like dreamland when I was walking through it. I think I was just so high on the endorphins and the oxytocin at that point. It was really, really magical. And we stopped and we bumped into our neighbours en route. And I remember having a surge with them there and them just kind of looking at me going, this is crazy, where she's out walking and she's going to have a baby. But for me, it just felt so right to be sort of back in nature. And again, kind of coming back to that idea of just trying to ignore what was happening for as long as possible, distraction being huge. So we had this beautiful family walk together. Pete took some little kind of shots of Atticus picking some strawberries. We were just sort of nibbled them on the way. Every sort of rock or log that I found, I would lunge up against, do a bit of side lunging, trying to open up that mid-pelvic region, help baby wiggle his way down. At that point, we did not know we were having a boy or a girl. So this was just baby at this point. Once we got back, actually along that walk, I got to the point where I had to actually lean on Pete for those surges. It was about 5 o'clock then, and I was sort of thinking, okay, this is it then. This is the real deal. I still hadn't spoken to my care providers or anything because I had such prodromal labour, so sort of that on-off labour, very long latent first phase, last time. So I was still kind of in denial. But we had this beautiful walk, got home and thought, okay, we're gonna have dinner. Luckily I had prepared dinner the day before, so we had a sort of cashew cream mac and cheese, and I had like 3 servings because I was just starving. Luckily I did, because I needed the energy for later on. But we then decided, okay, great idea, let's get Atticus into the bath. He always sleeps really well after a bath, so I can just concentrate on having a baby then. So I ran a lovely bath for him, popped him into the bath, and you know, things were sort of ticking along at that point. They were then becoming sort of really consistent. They were quite there's quite a rhythm to them, and I was getting a little bit nervous about how I was going to put Atticus to bed because he still nurses to sleep. So I was sort of going, oh my gosh, this is going to be intense. Little did I know, Atticus had his little bath. He had an absolute ball, managed to tip all of our succulents that we keep along the side of the bath, which I cleverly didn't remove, into the bath water. So he had his like little mud bath. And I just really couldn't give a hoot, which goes to show that I was really in labour at that point. But got him out, got him all cozied off and dried, and got him into his jammies. And then the real fun started when I was trying to sort of nurse him to sleep, because oh my goodness, I would take surges at a later phase in labour any day over trying to lie down and nurse a baby through surges. It definitely helped to move things along for sure. When you are breastfeeding, you release huge ejections of oxytocin, which of course moves those surges along, and that definitely was the case for me. So when he eventually fell asleep, it was about 9 o'clock, and I had already texted both of my midwives for them to arrive. And I remember somehow ninja rolling off the bed, getting out onto all fours on the landing and texting my husband saying, I can't get downstairs. So Pete came up and managed to sort of very cautiously navigate the stairs in between surges. They were kind of coming one on top of each other at that point. And luckily I had texted my friend to say she was on her way. So we quickly made our way downstairs. I knelt down on the cushion in front of the sofa in the sitting room, really breathing through my surges. Pete didn't really know what to do at that point, but I said, okay, let's start filling up the pool. In between surges, I was completely fine. I was chatting away. I was very much breathing through them. At that point, I had had absolutely no pain relief whatsoever, but I thought, oh yeah, I could do with maybe getting into the pool. I tried out my little Winterflow device, which for me, it didn't really work. I think it would be fantastic if you needed a little bit of assistance or guidance in terms of slowing down your out breath, but because I've been practicing my hypnobirthing so much, I was very much breathing instinctually in that way anyhow. So Pete had the sitting room all set up so beautifully. He had some twinkly fairy lights and candles and all my affirmations up around the place. We had the rebozo out. We had cushions for me to kneel on. We had the sofa totally covered so I could make a big mess of that and you could just whip the cover off. It was just absolutely perfect, but things were moving really fast. So from the point that I texted my my midwife, Paige arrived literally within 15 minutes of me texting her, because she only lives up the road. Paige is also one of my best friends, so that was really, really wonderful to have her there, and I think I really just needed her presence. Pete at this point was so ready for a really long labour that I think he got quite a fright that things were moving quite fast, and we were always kind of one step behind in terms of comfort measures and what was working. So really and truly what worked best was just going with my body. I was kind of singing through my surges at this point. Paige arrived to me in exactly the same position as I had made it when I was downstairs, or when I first made it downstairs, so I didn't really move all that much at all, despite what I would tell my clients to do, which is to get mobile and get moving during your labor. I found that this was the most comfortable position for me, and very much stayed in that position until I got into the pool to actually birth my baby. So I was sort of kneeling up on the seat of the sofa with my elbows, and then with sort of my knees down on the ground on a nice cushion, sort of singing and moaning through my surges. We had applied a TENS machine at one point, but it's hard to say whether it was all that helpful. Very much just being in my body and going with my surges as much as I could seemed to be the only way to manage them, and being really vocal, I kind of allowed myself to just make whatever sounds really, really helped, and focusing on just relaxing and releasing down below, and just reading those affirmations over and over again that were in front of me. Just relax your body, release your body knows what to do, you can do anything for a minute. And I felt so strong, I felt so empowered by this experience. I really felt like a queen through the whole thing, which is really, really wonderful. So at that point, Paige arrived to me being in that exact same position, and she just knelt beside me, and we were just forehead to forehead. She was just affirming to me everything that I already knew, and just telling me, it's not going to be that long. And I was still in complete denial. Things turned out she was absolutely right. Turned out that this was sort of an hour and a half of active labour altogether, and things picked up in intensity to the point that I was like, okay, I think I'd like to have a baby now. And just at the point that I was feeling that super intensity, where that sort of meeting that brink of transition, just as I was probably coming up to 10 centimetres, bearing in mind I had no monitoring or no vaginal examinations coming up to this. So in terms of whereabouts I was on that spectrum, I really don't know. But I can imagine that was me coming up to transition, where I was starting to sort of second guess myself. I said, okay, I'd quite like to get into the pool now. Things had moved so fast that the pool actually was not warm yet. But just as at that point, I had another surge, and my waters released everywhere with a big, dramatic, out of the movies pop all over this lovely cushion. We had a really good giggle about it because it was just so dramatic. And we kind of said, gosh, that's going to be my birthing cushion now, there's no saving it. And with that surge, I also felt a little bit of pressure to push. So I was like, oh, okay, I'm getting in the pool. I was so determined no one was going to stop me from having this water birth. I really had it in my head, this is how I was going to birth my baby. So I got up and started to kind of clamber my way into the pool, and Pete was kind of saying, babe, it's not warm yet, it's really not warm. I got in and I was kind of looking at him going, it's not warm, no, it's not quite warm. Paige was literally like trying to kind of get as many kettles full and pots full of hot water as she could. But I was in that pool, and from that point, for the next sort of 5 or so surges, the other midwife arrived, and then very much kind of Brenda came in and wanted to have a little listen to the baby, and I was like, I actually think I'm just going to have a baby. I could feel him spiraling his way through my pelvis, and feeling very much the urge to bear down with sort of every second surge or so, not every surge, or maybe just the peak of every surge. So I was just really listening to my body, and nobody was coaching me to push. I was just trying my best to sort of block everyone else out in that little bubble, and Paige was here just sort of whispering to me and telling me that I can do this, I can just block everyone out, that I can just be in my body. And listening to all of that and just visualizing my baby coming through my pelvis. I could feel every tiny little maneuver that was happening. And then it got to the point where I could say, I was able to vocalize, "You're having a dream," that I could feel my baby's head. And I asked Pete, "Do you want to feel your baby's head?" And I'm pretty sure he said no, and I grabbed his hand and made him feel it anyway, because I was just so, oh my gosh, I'm doing this, this is happening. And with the next surge then came that sort of stinging sensation, that ring of fire, and I remember vocalizing out loud going, "Ring of fire." And in the next surge then, his head just sort of ebbed and flowed, came forward and back. I remember feeling him sort of nudging his way forward with every surge, giving him plenty of space for my perineum to kind of stretch. And I think had I been in a hospital scenario and maybe doing coached pushing, I probably would have torn at that point. But because we were giving such great capacity for my body to really allow baby's head through, there was no damage whatsoever afterwards. So in the next few surges, this little baby's head was born, and then one more surge after that, his body came through. He was brought up to the surface by mummy and daddy, and I just held him so close. I didn't even think to find out whether we had a boy or a girl. We were stayed skin to skin for a few minutes, but it was actually quite cold in the pool. It was fine for birthing in, but afterwards I just wanted to snuggle up on the sofa. So my birth team helped me out of the pool, and I just moved straight over onto the sofa, lay back, and just looked at my new baby. I was on a complete high. I was ready to do it all over again in a heartbeat, and I still am. I cannot imagine that being my last birthing experience, nor my last pregnancy experience. So that just goes to show what a positive experience that I have had. I can only hope that other birthing people can have a similar experience to me. I want you to take from this not to fear birth. I felt truly ecstatic and loved and romantic throughout my whole birthing experience, and I feel like I've fallen in love with my husband in a whole other way all over again, which has been really wonderful. I lay on the sofa, checked to see did I need any stitches, which I didn't. We did beautiful delayed cord clamping. If you want to see any pictures of my birth, I've got sort of my birth story in pictures up on my Instagram page, and you'll be able to see it all there. But we did delayed cord clamping. We very much allowed Archer to find the breast himself. We didn't even check whether it was a boy or a girl until I had delivered the placenta, which just came during his first feed. He found the breast himself, latched on, and then I got another little surge, and the placenta came away from the lining of my uterus, and I delivered the placenta myself, and it was checked over by Anya, one of the other midwives. So we had Anya, Brenda, and my beautiful friend Paige there at the birth. And at that point there was very little bleeding. He was feeding okay. I was feeling really good. Had a little bit of water to drink, and then we decided to head our way up to bed. So I got upstairs, did a wee, clambered into my own bed with a little bit of help from Paige. She just checked my uterus to make sure that it was nice and firm and toned, and it was doing everything that it needed to do, contracting back together, clamping down to stop any bleeding from that site where the placenta had come away from the uterine lining, and clambered into bed to feed my new baby. Atticus woke himself at about, I think it was 4 o'clock, which is very, very good for him. So it was definitely something in the air that night. And he clambered into our bed. So I ended up having one baby on each side. And then he could hear little squeaks coming from Archer. And he sort of sat up and went, "Mama, what's that?" And it was the funniest meeting. But he's been so sweet with him, and it's been the most wonderful addition. It's like he's always been here, which is really wonderful. But now I am mum to 2 boys, which is insanity, because I think I was almost convinced that he was a girl, but I wouldn't change a single thing. And if you want to become more prepared to have a positive and empowering birth experience, make sure and check out my e-course, which I'll have linked in the description box down below, and my website, which has loads of freebies and free downloads and free goodies. So make sure and have a little check of that as well, and I'll see you next one.